I'm Tom Goreau, president of the Global Coral Reef Alliance, and I'm here to talk about regenerating marine ecosystems, and in particular, El Canal del Infiernillo in the Sea of Cortes in Mexico. All around the world, we're hearing more and more talk about generating a blue economy. The idea is to make more money from the sea in a sustainable way. But the fact is that all of our coastal marine ecosystems are in severe collapse. They're dead or dying in many cases because of the land-based sources of pollution, fertilizer, sewage, garbage, plastics, and other forms of chemicals and pollution that pour into the sea from rivers and groundwaters. This is a worldwide problem. We're not going to have a blue economy anywhere if we don't regenerate our marine ecosystems so that they provide the services of biodiversity, fisheries, shore protection, sand, and all the benefits that we get from the ocean. So regenerating coastal ecosystems is going to be essential to any blue economy. We're busy setting up marine parks and protected areas, but in fact the fish and the coral reefs are not coming back in these areas if they're not being actively regenerated, because in many cases the environment is so badly destroyed there's no more habitat left for the valuable species. So we have to not only protect them, we have to actively regenerate our ecosystems. And the fact is that we have methods to do so in every marine ecosystem. We're just not using the new technologies that have been developed in recent years. I'm going to focus here on the Sea of Cortes and a very special place within it. The Sea of Cortes is a remarkable feature of the Earth. It's a deep gash of deep blue cold ocean water that penetrates right into the heart of the Sonoran Desert, the driest part of North America. It's a very unusual feature, and the origin of it is that this is a part of the Earth where the continents are being ripped apart the fastest by the motions of plate tectonics. Baja California is a piece of Mexico that's being pushed away by rapid spreading beneath the surface by underwater volcanoes and hot springs that are pushing them apart at a very rapid rate. All of that very active motion creates large numbers of earthquakes, and that and the deep water causes large underwater landslides as a result of earthquakes. And so the Sea of Cortes is an area that for sure has large tsunamis from time to time. There doesn't seem to be very much of a historical record of it, but you can see their mark very clearly in the geology of the coastlines along the Sea of Cortes. This is an unusual habitat that sometimes can be very unstable because of physical activity. It's also special because, as I mentioned, there's deep water penetrating into a desert. And what allows the water to be productive there is the cold, nutrient-rich water deep down in the cold bottom water. Most places that doesn't reach the surface. But in the Sea of Cortes, that's stirred by the tides. There's a large tide that enters the Sea of Cortes, bounces up into the dead end at the northern end, and comes back and reaches up to 8 meters in height. So that large tide stirs the waters of the Sea of Cortes from the north end south and brings up all that cold, rich, deep, nutrient-rich water. As a result, the ocean is much richer than the land, much more productive. It was full of fish, of huge numbers, and it's a tremendously biodiverse system. There are large numbers of fishes, large numbers of marine mammals, large numbers of corals and snails and other rare species that occur only in the Sea of Cortes because it's such an unusual and rich habitat. As a result of that richness, you can see this here in this map. This shows how green the ocean is. It's a funny scale because the redder it is, the greener the water is. It's a mark of chlorophyll. That gives land plants the green color. It gives marine phytoplankton, the little microscopic plants that are the base of the entire ocean food chain. And when they grow in large amounts, when they have a lot of nutrients coming in, they turn the water green. The water turns to green soup. And in the Sea of Cortes, that tidal flushing brings up that cold, deep water, and you can see here how the waters in the Sea of Cortes are unusually green. As a matter of fact, nearly 80% of Mexico's fisheries production comes from the 4 states on the Sea of Cortes, and almost 40% of Mexico's fisheries is from Sonora alone. So this is an incredibly rich marine habitat, but it is on the edge of collapse. It has been severely overfished. The trawling for shrimp, the big fish were caught long ago, and as a matter of fact, this is not new. If you read Ed Ricketts' book on the log of the Sea of Cortes back in the 1930s and the 1940s, the ecosystem, the fisheries had largely collapsed. This is not new. There's very little left of what was there 100 years ago, and the Sea of Cortes was full of huge fish of all kinds. It also has unusual species. This map here shows the distribution of whales. In the wintertime, the cold winds blow from the north, and the whales migrate into the south, especially along the western side of the Sea of Cortes, all the way down to La Paz. And in the summer, when the warm winds blow from the south, they move up into the northern basins of the Sea of Cortes. So there's huge numbers of whales in the Sea of Cortes feeding off all that tremendous productivity fueled by those phytoplankton and the fish and things that are eating them. Those whales migrate back and forth, as we can see here, up and down the western side of the Sea of Cortes, and so do the whale sharks. The whale sharks are not whales, they're sharks. They're the largest fish in the world, and they're there following all that rich productivity, filtering out the water. Whale sharks are filter feeders, just like some of the big whales are. And again, they migrate back and forth. Another group of very unusual animals in the Sea of Cortes is the world's smallest, rarest, and most endangered marine mammal, the vaquita. That's the tiny little dolphin here in the center of this picture, and surrounded by the totoaba, a huge fish that used to get up to 2 meters and more long, although now they're very rare, and that's also severely endangered. And that's the most valuable fish in the world because the liver is used in Chinese medicine, and catching one big fish can make a fisherman rich. So they're avidly pursued, and they're almost extinct at this point. And they're unique to the Sea of Cortes. And they associate together. The vaquita follows the totoaba. And because the totoaba is so valuable, even though it's protected and rare, they fish for it with nets, and the nets catch the vaquita. Everybody loves the vaquita. No one wants to harm the vaquita. But they love the money they get from the totoaba's liver even more than they love the vaquita. And so both of these are vanishing very rapidly in the Sea of Cortes. They have a special habitat. The totoaba only lays its eggs in the freshwater swamps of the Colorado River. And now no fresh water reaches those swamps because all of it is sucked dry before it reaches the Mexican border by agriculture in the United States. So the totoaba ranges all up and down the northern part of the Sea of Cortes, but its critical habitat is the freshwater wetlands in the Sea of California. Mexican researchers have discovered how to raise the eggs and to restore the totoaba, but they have to have the freshwater habitat that's essential for the laying of the eggs and for the juveniles. So that's what's missing, is fresh water. The vaquita is only found right in front of the Colorado River swamps that have now disappeared. It's the last refuge. There's only about a dozen vaquitas left in the world. There's supposed to be no fishing there for the totoaba, but they're going quickly. I want to focus now on a very special place in the Sea of Cortes, and that is Tiburon Island, or Shark Island. That's the largest island in the Sea of Cortes. It's extremely dry, and it's separated from the mainland by a very shallow channel called El Canal del Infiernillo, which means the channel of hell. And the reason for that is when those big tides come sweeping through there twice a day, through that extremely shallow, narrow channel, those tides pile up into a surge that washes through that channel. It's extremely ferocious currents. That's why it's called the Canal of Hell, because it's very dangerous to try to run your boats through there. And it's avoided by the whales and the whale sharks and the big fish because it's so shallow and so rough with all those currents and mud being stirred up. The bottom is made up of sand, huge sand waves migrating back and forth with the currents on the bottom. There seems to be no solid rock. So it's a very special habitat. And that habitat is the Isla Tiburon and Canal del Infiernillo is the home, a special place. This is the Canal del Infiernillo from space. And you can see the waters rushing through and the sandbanks choking it, and another view from space. This area is the land of the Comca'ac people. The Comca'ac people are the aboriginal indigenous people of the Sea of Cortes. This is the last land they have, is Tiburon and Infiernillo. They used to range over a much larger area. They were slated for extermination by the Spanish, and every time soldiers would come from Spanish or the Mexican government to kill them, they would run away to this island, Tiburon, where they lived without water. They lived from cactus and from the sea. They knew no one could follow them because there were no wells where people could get water. And they survived for nearly 300 years there, living purely from the sea. So they're very remarkable people, and this is their land. They are thought by some people to have been a remnant of the original migration of people to the Americas that reached Chile more than 15,000 years ago. The Comca'ac people speak a language that's not related to any other language in the world, and their only close relatives are thought to have been the extinct cultures that lived in Baja California that are now gone. So they may have been, it's thought by some, that they were the remnant of the very first wave of people who settled the New World moving along the coast. So they're really exceptional people. The whole area around Tiburon and Infiernillo is part of the Comca'ac Ejido exclusive fishing zone, which they manage. And this is the area that we're trying to work with the Comca'ac people in order to regenerate some of the ecosystems and the special resources within this area. One of the special features is that there are about half a dozen unusual estuaries or wetlands. Most estuaries are flushed by fresh water coming from the land, by rivers. But there are no rivers here, it's desert. So these are very unusual estuaries full of mangroves that get all their fertility from the sea, not from land. They're very unusual. They're the northernmost limit of the mangroves, and so they're the home for many rare species that breed in these areas. So we want to work to try to protect and regenerate those ecosystems. In addition, Infiernillo has the largest area of seagrass in the Mexican Pacific, and probably in all of the Pacific coast of the Americas. And because it had a large area of seagrass, it also had the largest population of green turtles that are seagrass eaters. There were huge numbers of turtles in Infiernillo in the past, and in fact the Comca'ac lived from turtles for thousands of years. But once the trade came in and the market came to sell them to outsiders, the turtles disappeared, just like the shark fins cause the sharks to disappear. The Totoabas have vanished. So there are now very few turtles. So what we want to try to do is, first of all, the Comca'ac are now saving the turtles. They're saving the eggs, breeding them. They're trying to regenerate their turtle population because it's central to their culture. We want to try to help them by regenerating the seagrass habitat for the turtle, which we know how to do. The turtle is central for the Comca'ac people because what the Comca'ac people say is when the earth formed, it was entirely covered by the ocean. There was no land. The turtle dived down to the bottom of the sea and brought back sand in its mouth and made the first land with that. So it's an essential icon for the Comca'ac people. Another incredible resource is in two endemic species of shells. In fact, there are many rare shellfish that live in in Infiernillo and the Sea of Cortes. And there are two species of large shells, like they grow to this size in about 6 months. The Cayo riñón and the Cayo redondo. And they have meat that is extremely highly valued. This is one of the most valuable sea products. These shells live buried in the sand at the bottom of the Canal de Infiernillo, at the bottom of the high currents. And the Comca'ac dive for them. They dive for them on the bottom using hookahs. They're getting compressed air that are pumped through hoses that they breathe on the bottom. I've dived with them to go and harvest the Cayo to look at what they do. And what I realize is that the Comca'ac fishermen are killing themselves because they don't have filters on the compressors that are pumping the air into their lungs at the bottom. They spend hours down on the bottom hunting for these shells buried in the sand, and they're slowly dying as their lungs are polluted with oil from these filters. So what we're trying to do is develop methods with them for mariculture of these species so they can be grown in nets without diving and without the hazards of the Comca'ac people dying from harvesting the Cayo, which is their most valuable resource. So we're trying to develop sustainable mariculture with them for these rare endemic species. In addition, another important feature is this is not only the northernmost mangroves, it's also the northernmost coral reefs on the western shores of the Americas. There's only one species, Porites panamensis, which grows all the way up into the Sea of Cortes and all the way down to Colombia and Galapagos. Has an extraordinary range. And in Infiernillo, that's the most remarkable reefs that I've ever seen in my life, because the Porites panamensis has no hard bottom like to settle on, like it does in this picture. This is from, I think, Panama. It simply settles on shells and stones that are being rolled around the bottom by the currents. And so it grows on shells that are constantly rotating, and as a result, we have rolling stones, corals that are sort of spherical, rolling around on the bottom, growing on all sides. It's an entire reef made up of mobile corals. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So one of the things we want to do is expand those corals northward and make real reefs. It's an absolutely exceptional habitat. We're trying to work with the Comca'ac people to develop a group called the Tiburon Business Alliance. And the purpose of the Tiburon Business Alliance is to develop the untapped, sustainable tidal energy of Infiernillo, from the tidal surge that goes racing through that channel. And the idea there is to use tidal currents, but without any dams, no dams that would impede the fish or block the flow. The idea would be to have floating tidal turbines on the top, on the surface, anchored to the bottom. And this would allow potentially the largest tidal energy project in the world. It could be powering the largest desalination plants in the world and providing the electricity and water for northern Mexico and cities on the other side of the border like Arizona and Southern California that have no water and electricity. This site could be producing huge amounts of green energy and water where there now is no supply. So we're trying to work with them to develop their resources and also do it in a way that's environmentally sound and enhances their rare and endangered species. The method we want to use is the Global Coral Reef Alliance's Biorock technology. This is a Biorock reef from Indonesia that's 4 years old. We grew this reef in a place that had nothing. It was just sand with little small pieces of broken coral rubble on the bottom. There was no corals, no fish. We grew this reef and created a habitat for all these fishes and all species. They grow faster. They survive conditions that would kill them, like high temperature bleaching. They will survive that. They're just growing faster and stronger and hardier, and they build up huge biodiversity. Huge populations of fish swarm around them. So what we'd like to do in the Sea of Cortes is build reefs like this on the bottom to anchor the floating tidal turbines, and then floating reefs to make habitat for the fish, like the Totoaba. We have many applications. First of all, we'd use the Biorock method to develop sustainable mariculture of the Cayo and the other rare endemic shellfish of the Infiernillo, so they can generate much more income and produce more of these valuable species with less harm to themselves, to regenerate the seagrass habitat for the turtles, to make floating reefs for Totoaba habitat, and also to provide fresh water to allow them to hatch. And we want to use Biorock technology to migrate the coral reefs northward in this Infiernillo and the mangroves as well, and all the habitat for the things that live there. And as I mentioned earlier, to make anchor reefs for tidal surge energy turbines, and furthermore to use Biorock technology to produce new forms of building material that are harder than concrete and that remove CO2 from the atmosphere instead of producing it. So there are many applications. I mentioned these because we need to regenerate all marine ecosystems everywhere in the world if we're going to have a blue technology. This is one special case where we have many unusual species in a very unusual community that we want to work with to try to protect their resources and use it for a better future. For more information, please, you can look at some of these links. The first link has a remarkable article about the Comca'ac people and their way of life, and contains 2 videos about their fisheries and some about their ancient artistic traditions. You can find more information about the Tiburon Tidal Energy Project and some Biorock technology on these websites. Thank you very much.